Christmas bells ring, ring, swinging my shopping bag, singing.
Hi guys, today's video is all about Chanel for 2022. It's the best of and also the worst as well. Now, the majority of the products that I did purchase from Chanel I absolutely love. I think they are gorgeous. But there was one complete fail, and there's also a couple of items that I think is going to be an unpopular opinion, and although they're not fails, they're probably something I won't repurchase in the future. So I've done my skincare for the morning, but I haven't got on any primer yet. So today I'm going to use the Tom Ford primer. It's the Traceless Soft Matte one. So I'm just going to pop this on, and then I'll just let it sit for a minute before I put my foundation on. So Chanel released two new foundations this year, and one of them is the No1 De Chanel, which I reviewed when it came out at the beginning of this year. And the other one was the Beiges. It's the Water Fresh, it's the Complexion Touch. Both of these are probably items I may not purchase in the future. And the thing is that they are both beautiful foundations. When I first put them on, they are just absolutely gorgeous. The problem with this one, the Water Fresh Touch, is I think it's more suited for those with normal to dry skin. Those of you who are watching my video for the first time, I have really oily skin, and it's now summer here in New Zealand, and I tried these Beiges, the Water Fresh Complexion Touch. Now these were released in our autumn winter, so it was a lot cooler here. My skin is still oily during that time, but it's nowhere near as oily as it is now when the weather is a lot warmer. And this looked really beautiful when I first put it on. The problem is that it doesn't last and it moves around. And I've tried a few different methods of using it, and I think what I ended up doing was putting on, I think it's the Milk Hydro Grip Primer, and that did help. But it just doesn't seem to last very well during the day. And when it wears off, it doesn't really wear off very well either. Now, I'm not going to waste this. I will use it up, but I'm not going to be using this today, because if this doesn't last very well during the cooler months, there is no way that this is going to last on my oily skin, especially today. It's a beautiful day out there today. It's going to get really, really warm, and I know that this won't last. So the one that I'm going to put on today is the No1 De Chanel. And again, this is a really beautiful foundation. I think it makes your complexion look absolutely gorgeous. The problem that I have with this one is that no matter sort of how much I try and matte it down, it tends to go from an initial glow to it can start looking a little bit greasy. So I may purchase this again in the future, but possibly unlikely. Really, this one is, with my oily skin, it's more suited for the coldest month, winter here. But I am going to put this one on today, and that's why I use that Tom Ford Traceless Matte Primer. I also really love the Hourglass Primer, but I just find the Tom Ford one just a little bit more mattifying. Now, I have this in the shade B30, and when I initially bought this, I did think it was, and I'm usually a B30 in Chanel foundations, but I did think it was a little bit light, but it still works. So I'm just going to put it on today using a beauty blender. It goes on beautifully with a brush as well. It's just that in the summer, I tend to like using beauty sponges or beauty blenders more. It presses the product more into my skin and just helps a foundation to stay put. And also I've just run this under cold water and squeezed out the excess water, and it feels really nice and cool on my skin because it's quite warm in the room here, especially with the lights that I have as well. So when I first put this on, it does look really, really beautiful, and it does stay looking beautiful during the day. But like I was saying, the problem that I have is that it just tends to go from a beautiful glow and starts heading towards more can start to look a little bit greasy. And I think that's what will probably happen today since it is warmer. But this one is a lovely one, as I was saying, for the winter months when my skin's just a little bit drier. So for my eyebrows, I'm going to use the Chanel. This is the Defining Longwear Eyebrow Pencil. And this is in the one from Clair. This isn't a new release for this year, but I absolutely love this eyebrow pencil. I use it nearly every day, and I just really love the shade. And I also love it that it's waterproof as well. So I've also just put some eyeshadow primer on and lightly powdered over the top. And the next product, the concealer, is not just my favourite from the Chanel that was released this year, but probably out of all the makeup products that were released this year. And that is the Sublimage concealer. This is in number 30. And from the first video when I did a first impression with it, and I loved it then, I still love it now. Nearly every single day I reach for this concealer. It is just absolutely beautiful. It gives great coverage. It doesn't crease. It just looks beautiful throughout the day. It is moisturizing because even though I have oily skin, I still need lots of moisture under my eyes, because if they start to dry out, then that is what starts emphasizing wrinkles and crinkles. It really just is absolutely beautiful. And I've got used to it being in a jar. I had wished that it had been in a pump or with a doe foot applicator. I think the packaging itself is really beautiful with the glass. It's just that I wish that it had been in different packaging. This one just is a little bit messy to use. But in saying that, I've been using it nearly every day and I'm just used to it now. And it does come with this little spatula, so I'll use that today. And you really only need the smallest amount. The other thing that I love with this concealer, because when I first started using it, I did end up putting too much under my eyes. But even if you do, it doesn't seem to matter. You can still just tap it out and it doesn't get thick or cakey. Whereas other concealers, even though I like them, if I put on too much to begin with, then they do look quite thick, and there's nothing really I can do about that. But this concealer is almost a mistake proof one, and I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. So I just put a few dots in the inner corner and just pop the rest, just the excess, under my eye through there. And this does come with a little brush, and the brush is really soft. It is lovely, but I put this on just using my fingers. I think the warmth of your fingers just helps concealer just to go on beautifully under your eyes. And so I always start in the inner corner, and then I just slowly tap out the product underneath. And even now, I've probably used a little bit too much. I'll just tap some over my eye as well. But it won't matter that I've used a little bit too much. It just always looks really, really beautiful. And the other thing that I like about the shade 2 in 30 is that it's actually a little bit brightening. And in the past with concealers, I've tended to use ones that are the same shade as my foundations, because sometimes I feel with brightening under your eyes it can sort of emphasize things that you don't want. But with this, it has the brightening effect but just still looks absolutely beautiful. I'm absolutely in love with this concealer. I think it's gorgeous. So I'm just going to let the concealer sit there for a minute, and I'm going to powder my face first, and I'm going to use the Natural Finish Loose Powder. This is in number 30. Now, because this foundation has more of a glow and it's going to be really warm today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake this powder on using my beauty blender. I never bake under my eyes. It's just for my face. Just try and prevent too much oil coming through. So all I do is I just shake a little bit of powder so it comes to the top there, and I take the beauty blender that I use to put my foundation on with, and I just dip it into the powder and just place it on, and I'll just leave it sitting there just for about a minute, and then I'll just dust it off with a fluffy brush. And by doing this just helps the foundation just to stay put just a little bit longer. So initially after I've done this, it will look like a flat matte, but probably before I've even finished this video, that glow will come back. But I'm hoping that it won't go beyond that. So by doing this, it just helps, just keeps the foundation just from getting that sort of from that glow to that greasy look. And then I'm going to take the BK Beauty, this is the 102, and I'm just going to just lightly dust just any excess powder from that baking, just dust it away. So you can see it's taken it from that glow just more to a matte finish. And then for the powder under my eyes, I'll be using the Westman Atelier. It's the Vital Press skincare powder. This is in the shade Creme, and I'll just tap a tiny amount just to set the concealer down. This one and the By Terry press powder are just beautiful, really lovely powders for setting under the eyes. And I've mentioned it before, this is no good for on my face because it has a lot of humectants in it, and it just really doesn't do anything for my face at all. It doesn't set, in fact it probably adds oiliness, but for under my eyes it's absolutely perfect. So for bronzer, I'm going to use the Beiges. It's the Oversized Healthy Glow Sun Kiss powder. I got this in 2 shades. I got medium, this is the one I'm going to use today, and I also got the one in deep as well. Both work. Now they also released this year in the cream bronzer, because they had the light and then the deep, and they also released the medium, which I haven't picked up yet, but hopefully I'll probably do that next year. So I absolutely love this bronzer. I think it is just gorgeous, and I use it a lot. In fact, I've been using it quite a bit this week. I think the formula of it is just absolutely beautiful. It just blends and diffuses really, really beautifully. So I'm just going to grab Sonia G. This is the Niji Pro. This is the brush that I use most of the time when I do bronzer. And I just think this is just such a beautiful, although it's not really called a bronzer, it could be an all over powder. And one of my subscribers with the deep, when she bought it, she found it a bit too deep for her face, but she uses it to put over her legs and arms to give a bit of a tan, and she said it works really beautifully for that. I just tend to use this as a bronzer, but I think it's just gorgeous, and it does have a scent like most Chanel products do. I don't find it overwhelming at all. Now I'm not sure whether this was limited edition or not. I think that they are still available, and so I'm not really sure, as I was saying, whether they are limited edition, but I would love to get a backup just in case they are, because I just really, really love it. And now on to eyeshadow, and if you guessed that the Tweeds were going to be my favourite, you would be absolutely right. But there were some other really beautiful eyeshadow quads by Chanel as well. So I'm just going to quickly run through the ones that I picked up that were released this year. So the first one in the pile in front of me is number 747, and this was the Mediterranean. And you can see that I've used this one a bit. I thought this was a really, really, really beautiful quad. And then next I've got the one, it is Imagineer. Now this one came out at the beginning of this year. This was a really beautiful quad. It looks a little bit plain, I think, when you look at it in the pan, but on the eyes, this is absolutely stunning. And this is probably the one that I would have put on today, but I don't think this is available any longer, so I won't do that. And next was number 58, and this was Intensity. Again, a really beautiful color story. You've got the plums and the gold and I thought this was really beautiful as well. Another quad that probably looked a little bit plain in the promo photos, but on the eye, just absolutely beautiful. And then came the Tweeds, which I will show you in a minute. But the latest one from their holiday, and this one is number 937. It's Ombres de Lune. And this is a lot better than I thought that this was going to be as well. I saw quite a few videos where some people didn't like it. They thought it all blended into one. I have used this a couple of times since I did the video on it, and I tend to use just a couple of shades at a time from this quad instead of using all four at once. But it really is a really beautiful color story. And then of course my favorite for the year, and that is the beautiful Tweeds. I did get a backup in a couple of, actually I think 3 of these shades. So the 3 that I got a backup of were Couvre, and then I got Brun at Rose, and the other one was Pourpre. Those are the 3. My least favorite one, I really do love them all. My least favorite one out of them was this one, and that was Fauve. And it's not that I don't like it, it's just one that I don't reach for as much as the other quads. Probably because it's got a little bit of orange in there, which sort of have to be careful with, or I just have to be in the mood to wear it. Again, it's probably something similar to the holiday, where I think maybe if you just use a couple of the shades at a time instead of all 4, probably get a lot more looks out of this, and probably a little bit softer as well. But there's nothing wrong with the formula of it. It's really just the color story. It's just one that I don't reach for a lot. And the tweed pouches that these came in, these are just absolutely beautiful. So I'm just deciding which one to put on my eyes today, because I really do love all 3 of these. Probably in order of using them, there's not really one I reach for more. Brun at Rose and Kivra, they're probably the 2 that I reach for the most. But the other day I also put on Pourpre, and I just think that is really beautiful as well. It's not too purple, it's actually just really, really beautiful. And then we've got Kiva. Now there's some people that didn't like this because it has that glitter and they tended to get a bit of fallout. I'm just really careful how I put that on, and I don't tend to get too much fallout, or hardly any at all. And finally is Brun at Rose, and this is a beautiful, just neutral, everyday type of eyeshadow color story, and it is really, really gorgeous. So I think today I'm going to put on the Tweed. I'm going to put on 02, and I'm going to put on Pourpre. I think this is really, really beautiful. So I'm not going to talk while I put on this eyeshadow quad. I reviewed all of these quads, and if you want to take a look at those, I do have a playlist, and it is titled Chanel Tweeds. So while I'm putting this on, and when I edit it, I will just put some music to it.
The river flows one direction, and fishes, they follow the flow. But what if one tried to mention that there was much more to explore? Here I am, I have a plan, I'm living free, don't know where I'll land. Here I am, I have a plan, I'm living free, don't know where I'll land. A dragonfly heard the message. Darkness was home for the
So for eyeliner, I use the shade, it is Bois Noir, and I just tight lined on my upper lash line, and I just put a little bit on my lower lash line as well. Now for mascara, I'm going to use one that was released this year by Chanel, and this is the Noir Allure, and it is in this really beautiful casing, and it just pops up like their lipstick range as well. It's really, really beautiful. There are a lot of people, they're either in a camp where they don't like this at all, they think it's a complete fail, or they really love it. I really love this. Some people found that it flaked or it transferred or smudged during the day. I've worn this a lot and I haven't found that at all, and it's interesting because I have oily skin. I've also worn this recently during the warmer weather as well, and again I haven't found that it's transferred or smudged at all. I think this is a really lovely mascara. I also love my all-time favorite one, and that is the Chanel Le Volume as well. And is this as good as the Le Volume? Well, I think the formula is good. The Le Volume definitely gives more volume on your lashes. I think this one is more of a lengthening mascara. It does add a bit of volume as well. And I've also found that the trick with this mascara is, I don't know whether you are like that, but sometimes when I do mascara, I do this eyelash and then I go to that one and I go back and forth. Whereas this one, I think it dries a little bit quicker than the Le Volume. So what I do is I just do one eye at a time and finish that and do the layering that I want to do, because I really like layering a mascara. So I just do one eye at a time, and then it does build really lovely as well. I also think that it separates the lashes really beautifully as well. So that's the one that I'm going to use today. There were also quite a few blushes released this year as well. So some of them I'll just run through very quickly. This one is gorgeous. This came out earlier in the year, and this one is Brun Rossi. Really beautiful. It did come with a little brush, but this is the most beautiful, beautiful shade, and I do reach for this blush quite a bit. I think it's just really, really beautiful. And then there were the Comet blushes. There were a couple of them. One I really don't think was a blush at all. Probably more of a highlighter. It was just very, very fair. And when I used both of these blushes together, that's how I used them. I used this one, it was Coral Atoll. And then I used the other one, which I'll show you in a minute. And I used that over the top and also as a really subtle highlighter. So this one is Coral Atoll. And this was absolutely stunning, and it just had that reflection in the mirror, just such a beautiful. So you had the star down below, and then when you lift the mirror up, you had the interlocked CCs for Chanel. I think this was really beautiful packaging. So the other one that I was talking about, that is Peach Cosmique, and this is the shade of that one. So as you can see, it's really, really light, but it does go beautifully over the top of the other blush, and also for a really beautiful subtle highlighter as well. And again, it had, if I lift up the mirror, you can see faintly the star there, and it had the double CC. You can see the interlocked CCs there in the mirror. Just really, really beautiful packaging and really lovely blushes. And also this year, Chanel released the Beiges. It's the Water Fresh blushes. I absolutely love these. I think these are beautiful. I have them in 4 shades. I have light pink. I've also got warm pink as well. And I also picked up light peach. I picked that up after I picked up the first 3. And I've also got it in intense coral. So they have the packaging the same as the original, the Water Fresh tint. And I think it's really, really lovely. There's some people, when I read reviews on Chanel, and I think it might have been Nordstrom as well, some people were saying there was no payoff. They were absolutely useless, but they aren't. They're just as a way to put them on and initially break up the pigment. So today I'm actually going to double blush, because Chanel also put out the No1 De Chanel. This is the lip and cheek balms, and this is in the shade Healthy Pink, and this shade is just absolutely gorgeous, and I just love these for a blush. So first of all, I'm going to put on one of the Water Fresh blushes, and I'm going to use light pink. It's a very, very subtle colour. It has probably less pigment than the other three Water Fresh blushes, but in saying that, it just gives a really beautiful wash of colour. So I'm just going to put a couple of pumps on the back of my hand. Now with the other shades, I would only use one pump for both cheeks, but because this is a lighter shade, I've done 2 pumps. And then I just take my finger and just break up the pigment. This, when you apply it, just feels like the Water Fresh tint and also the complexion touch. It feels really cooling when you first put it on. So when you break them up, all the pigment is released, and you can see on the back of my hand that there's definitely pigment there. As I was saying though, this is probably the lightest out of the 4 that I have, but I think it is a really beautiful colour. Now there are different ways you can apply this. I use it sometimes by just tapping it with my fingers on my cheeks. I also use one of my Sonia G brushes, or you can use a beauty blender as well. I think today I will just pop it on using my fingers, and now that I'm looking on the back of my hand, I'm thinking maybe 2 pumps was too much. But I love the shade. It's a really beautiful wash of colour, and it goes really well over. I'm just going to put some on the other side just to get rid of some of the pigment. It goes really well over the powder. It doesn't lift foundation or powder underneath. I think it's just gorgeous. So this shade is just a really beautiful, it's just a light wash of colour, but I think it is really, really lovely. So it's going to be a little bit bolder today because I'm going to go on with the other one and double blush. So I'm just going to go over the other side. And 2 pumps was actually far too much. So I'll take that back. You don't need 2 pumps for the shade, just 1 pump. Just make sure that you break up the pigment properly first on the back of your hand. And it feels really cooling going on. So now I'm just going to go over with this blush here, the No1 De Chanel, and I'm not going to put too much on since I'm double blushing. But this shade it's just beautiful on its own. I think it's gorgeous as well. And as well as the Beiges, the Water Fresh blushes, I've also been reaching for this one a lot. I've reached for it a lot throughout the year, but more so this time of the year. I think it's really light and just really, really beautiful. And then for highlighters, I've got 3 in front of me. One is an absolute fail, and the other 2 are really beautiful. So the latest one is the Eclat Lunaire. This is an All Rose. This was with the holiday collection with that really beautiful embossing, and this is absolutely gorgeous. This goes beautifully underneath blush if you want that lit from within glow, and then pop a blush over the top, and it goes beautifully over the top of blush as well, and also used just as a highlighter. You could possibly use this all over your face. I think it's a little bit too dark for me, but I think the formula and the packaging of this is really beautiful. But the outstanding highlighter for this year, and this was the Rev de Camellia, and this is just stunning. The embossing of this is just absolutely beautiful, and I love the shade of this highlighter too. It is subtle when it goes on. It's just really, really pretty. So I'm going to take a Chukuhodo brush. This is the KZ03 brush, and I'm just going to lightly sweep through there and just pop some on my cheekbone, and it's just such a beautiful highlight. Really subtle. It looks gorgeous, gorgeous on the skin, and this is no longer available, but no doubt Chanel will be bringing out other highlighters, and if you missed out on this year's one, this beautiful one, then I would certainly recommend other ones that they put out. The formula of them are just so beautiful. So the absolute fail for me, and this was the Stylo, the Lumiere Regard. And I picked this up. There were 2 different shades, and I'm not quite sure which shade this one is. And they say that this is a top coat, so you could put it over the top of eyeshadow. You can also use it as a highlight as well. Now, when I did my video on this, it was a first impression, and I'd put on a really beautiful eyeshadow, and once I popped this on, it started lifting the eyeshadow. I don't like this product at all. And then in the video, I also tried it over the top of just on my cheekbone here, and again it started lifting foundation. It looked patchy. And later on, I did see some videos where people said there were different ways or methods you could use it. I tried it a couple of other ways, and I still didn't like it. I think this is a fail. Anything that starts lifting the product that you've already put on, and if you've spent quite a bit of time doing a really lovely eyeshadow look, the last thing you need is a product that lifts it. It's just, no, this was just an absolute fail and a big no for me. So I won't be putting it on today because I don't want the blush and the beautiful highlighter to lift, and I don't want the eyeshadow to lift either. One of the standouts for me this year was the fall collection and those beautiful nude lipsticks. I ended up buying 5 of those, and I did a dedicated video on that along with the nail polishes. I'm wearing one of the nail polishes today. I absolutely love them. So I think I ended up picking 5 or 6 nail polishes in the end, and quite a few of the lipsticks. So if you want to take a look at that video, I go through all of the lipsticks, putting them on, and I also do swatches of the nail polishes as well. I think the collection is just absolutely stunning. So today I'm going to put on number 206. This is in the shade Illusion, and it has the pop-up, and the formula of the Rouge Allure is just really, really beautiful. So I'll just hold it up so you can take a look, but the shade Illusion really just is the perfect nude. It's really, really beautiful. So the finished look with all the Chanel on is really, really beautiful. I'm never disappointed when I decide to put on a full face of Chanel. I always think it looks really beautiful. The foundation is actually holding up pretty good because it's been quite a while. I've had a couple of breaks, and so it's been on for over an hour now, but I'm sure baking on that powder has helped. It's still early in the morning here, so it hasn't got too warm. So I imagine later in the day I'm going to get even more of a glow through. But from that initial baking of the foundation, when I put the powder over the top, it has come back from that flat matte, and I have got, at the moment, it's just a very subtle, beautiful glow, and I do love that. Let's hope it stays like that throughout the day, but I've got a feeling it's going to start to get a lot more glowy than that, and maybe border on maybe looking a little bit oily. The other thing that I wanted to mention about Chanel releases is that this year they brought out some oils, and one of them was the Beiges. It's the illuminating oil face body in here, and this is just absolutely beautiful. And in the holiday they also brought out a Chanel number 5 body oil, and they also brought out Mademoiselle. It was the pearly, it was the gel, and both of those are behind me on the top shelf. I really love these. I love these oils. They're more of a dry oil, so they absorb into the skin really beautifully. And what I love about them, and I also love it with the gel as well, is that they keep your skin looking hydrated for a long, long time, probably more than a hand moisturizer. So initially, you work the oil in, and once it's all worked in, it doesn't feel greasy at all, and I just love the way it makes my hands and arms look really hydrated throughout the day. I think these are really beautiful, and I think that they have been really popular, so I'm hoping next year that Chanel will be bringing out more of these, and I will be picking them up. I think they're really, really lovely. So I think I remembered to mention everything that I purchased this year from Chanel. there was a lot, and all the releases were really lovely. Just a couple of things I may not purchase again, those two foundations, although this one is looking pretty good today, but definitely won't be buying that Stilo again. I just think that was an absolute fail. I do have a list in front of me, and I've just gone through it of things that I did purchase this year and did videos on, and I think that I have covered everything. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye.